Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap up presented by David Goxstein or brought to you by David Goxstein. I'm your host, Landy, and today is June 5th, 2026. And today is a special day for a few different reasons. First, we hit the downside target that I was looking for in the 58 to 60 range that I talked about in the last video. But of course, today is live, and I'm live because I wanted to bring my audience here and all of you guys that watch me on a regular basis a special little treat. And it's other analysts that are my friends. In fact, I have two in the green room right now who I believe are some of the best in the game. That being Nat, who is a TradFi and crypto legend. Many of you already know her from ATC and the Wolf Spaces, in particular, Wolf Bitcoin and Wolf Crypto. You can often find her there. And of course, every Monday through Thursday on ATC. And then I have another esteemed guest, and that is one Bits of Wealth. You might know him from, well, the Wolf Bitcoin Spaces, as he is the co-host over there with Cade hosting, of course, and he's part of the Wolf Financial Network. And look, these are two of the best in the game. I am going to be doing this more and more, and on Fridays in particular, and trying to bring you some of the best analysts in the game um, that I actually look to when I have questions about what's going on in markets because I can't see everything, I can't be everywhere. And they have niches that they're looking at and specific ways and that they're looking at price action. They have a proven track record and they're just good people. So I am going to be bringing them in here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a moment to say, called it. We've been looking for this 58 to 60, and I wanted to get the called it in before Nat could. So I'm going to bring Nat and Bits of Wealth in here and introduce them. So we've got Nat, and we've got Bits of Wealth here. Hello, how are you, Nat?
Doing well, doing well. I'm excited that I get to be part of the Bitcoin Puppet stream. And you're right, we absolutely did call it. Fantastic job, guys, across the board. And I think it speaks volumes as to how important these line squigglers are and how these lines they really do make a big difference, right, in terms of positioning or even like knowing where the price action is heading and how to manage risk. I think that's very key, and we're seeing it across the board how knowing technical analysis, even if it's just like the basics, can help go a long way.
I agree. I really do agree. Look, and we've seen a lot that were questioning what many of us were talking about for quite some time. Myself, yourself, Bits of Wealth as well, and many others that frequently, well, many of us obviously know we all really know each other from a few different spaces and places on X, but in particular, we hang out with a crew of people that have a lot of confluence in what we're talking about, different approaches for how we get there. We've had a lot of people that didn't like some of the things that we were talking about when it came to price action, in particular on Bitcoin. But now I do think that maybe we're going to turn a corner here because some of them are coming around to it. And with that said, I wanted to introduce Bits here and welcome you to the stage here. Bits, I watch your streams. I think you do such a fantastic job. And it's an honor to have both you and Nat here, and I can't wait to kind of dig into some charts here. How you doing, Bits?
Yo, what's up, man? Nah, thanks for the invite, man. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, look, Bitcoin. I'll actually kind of run you guys through a little bit of what I'm. Um, how'd you manage to change the background? I didn't realize you could change the background. Anyway, I'm going to figure out how to change the background from now on. But I'm gonna run you guys kind of through my analysis here just on Bitcoin, and then I'd like to whichever one of you wants to share a chart first there, and whatever charts you want to share, whether it's Bitcoin or something else, whatever it is that you want to talk about, the floor is open. But I'll just kind of show you guys what I look at here on Bitcoin, and that's I primarily use a triple Bollinger Band setup. Um, and that is use it for volatility measurements and finding confluence with running of course against a trend um, in the counter trend manner, find reversal setups, continuation setups, and then of course compression and expansion setups. One of my favorites more recently was when we were right at a daily level and lost it, 74 to 76, acting as resistance, going into a compression to a big old expansion that we're on right now. But in terms of the daily, I you know I have I am a line drawer. I have a sickness, okay? I've got a lot of lines here, but they all kind of mean something. I've got some key overhead areas of interest. They're all the same color because why differentiate? Um, but essentially, I was looking at 82 and a half to $83,000 at the monthly close open as a big rejective area. If we had gotten above there, then I would have raised those targets 85, 86, 89 to 90. But I like to work in weeklies. Yellow zone here is a weekly. We've got daily zones in purple. Nice big trend down all the way to the lows and swept now the 60K low right into a major area, which is a monthly, daily, and a weekly level around 58 to 59K, to that $60,000 low area. So I would be looking at this and am looking at this as aggressive expansion into a prior area of support. And I'd only be looking for continuation down if we were to see, increased volatility over the weekend that loses $58,000. When I look at these things, I look at a lower third in what's called a price replace band. So where the current lower third is would be the target for the next day after seeing the next day's close. So in this case, the lower third standard deviation yesterday was right at the bottom side here, and it was right around $58,000. And as Bitcoin started to dip down into it, we got the stretch out. So high volatility environment. It's not over yet. I have volatility metrics in the corner that I don't think people can see right now, but that's okay. It's pretty high volatility, but not absolutely maxed just yet. So if we did see this area fail, I am looking for outside of any kind of swings. Swings are fine, but closes outside of this, to be specific, 58.8 or so to $58,000 even, I'd be looking for price to head down and try to tag, you know, somewhere around 55 to 56K minimum. Now that is on a daily projection. I'm looking at this as being an aggressive move down, um, on the weekly time frame. Something that I talk about with you guys on stages a lot is that I have a Bollinger Band set up here where we were moving from where we were moving from compression at the highs to a big expansion down, and now we have essentially entered compression again, or a ranged compression. So although it's been volatile on the dailies, this weekly is telling me that if we were to close below the low, the criteria is um, the criteria would be that we close below the low and the lower second. And then I'd be looking for the next big area, which is right around, 54 to $56,000, which just so happens to be on that weekly level that I had just had up here just a moment ago. So if we were to zoom in on the weekly, if we close below the lows, we'd get expansion down into the next big weekly area of interest, which is a big one, anywhere from 52 and a half to 56, with some key levels between 54 and 55 in here or so. That's where, after that, if this level was lost, then I start looking to upper 40s to $50,000 and then down to the mid 40s, so on and so forth. So this is a key area for Bitcoin, is what I'm trying to say. Bitcoin bulls want to see closes remain above $60,000. Otherwise, this expansion to compression will resolve in a re-expansion to the downside. And there is no doing. There's nothing to be bullish about on weekly closes below. In this case, the last high here at 82.8. So essentially, right around that monthly at 82.5 to $83,000. Let's see. Nat, I think we lost you. If you'd like, I can take you off the stage and have you fix the camera. Oh, I think she's going to come back. Or yeah, so I think she might fall off the stage here in a second. Not quite sure. But I work in a very simple fashion when it comes to this stuff. Bitcoin's at a critical junction. If it doesn't, hold up here, we're going to the next leg down. Bottom side of the structure is all the way open from longer term timeframes. Many people already know this. This is also a lower second standard deviation on the monthly, right around the 58.8 region, 58.5 as it stretches out to the downside. And in this case, we essentially we lose this area on a close for the weekly. We can front run the monthly because we're probably going to go down, which is going to kick off expansion to the low side structure, high side structure over here from a monthly standpoint, which is upper 40s to $50,000. And realistically, that's going to open up on any expansion. The lower third, month over month, would tick down right now in a very key area around a weekly at $42,000. So that is kind of where I stand right now. Nothing really exciting, even if things rally out of here below on closes below 82.8, unless we see some sort of a structural change. Outside of that, we've broken any kind of local uptrending structure. So I'm curious as to what you all are thinking, the two of you, whichever one of you is uh, is ready to go here. You're more than welcome to unmute and let me know what some of your thoughts are. We can just have a conversation too while we get charts ready and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I was gonna say, Nat, you're welcome to go, but if you need a little bit of time, I can jump. Yeah,
Can you guys hear me all right?
yeah.
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 Up to
So,
you, Nat. Up to you. You
yeah,
let me know.
I yeah, I don't mind going. I don't mind going.
Okay.
Here,
Yeah.
let me share my chart very quickly. There's actually two charts I want to touch on, if that's okay, guys.
Yeah, for sure.
First is yeah. So first, I want to share the BTC chart, and then our favorite is silver because I think silver is at a very important level here, and I think what it does next, it matters a lot in terms of marketing, in terms of the market, in terms of structure for silver. And I think today we saw how silver came down. We saw commodities in general just come down, and equities came down, and Bitcoin came down. So I think BTC along with silver and gold, obviously, right? Those are at very very pivotal levels. So I'll go ahead and share my BTC chart. 1 second. Here you go. All
All right. We'll get that
right.
up here.
Do you guys see that?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to warn the audience real quick here. We're moving from dark charts to light charts.
Let me get my sunglasses really
Yeah,
quickly
hold
and
on. Sorry, guys. I
All
open up
right,
the
literally just
blinds.
put
vampires. All
mine on.
right. All right, vampires. Are we good? Are we ready to go, vampires? All right.
Yeah. Do you
So
want
the
do
daily
you want it
chart.
like this, or is it all right down here? Because I know some of the chart gets cut off like this. Let's do it like this.
Yeah, this one looks good. I like this layout.
All right. Sorry, Nat.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let's do it like that. All right. So I think the daily chart looks very interesting to me. it got to the level that a lot of us was looking at, right? One key area, when we were on the stream with Bits and Lady Trade, I believe you were in the comment section as well. This area that we're looking at here, this was a very pivotal moment, right? And we saw a clear rejection. Not only did we see the clear rejection on the daily, but we saw the clear rejection on the weekly, and we also saw clear rejection on the monthly. And one thing that I often say, and those of you that have joined me in previous spaces, is a failed move higher leads to a move lower. Failed move higher, meaning rejecting to go higher. And we saw how it rejected here, right? So what happens next? Obviously, being that it's a failed move higher, lower is most likely. And which is what we're seeing now. We're seeing across the board, right? But what's very interesting to me on the daily is the RSI. We're oversold on the RSI. And every time we're oversold, it's usually followed by some kind of a move to the upside, even if it's temporary move, right? Like we saw in November of 2025, we got oversold, we bounced a little bit, but it followed by move down, right? Same thing in February, actually earlier this year. We got to an oversold level, we bounced a little bit, and now we're seeing the next leg down, right? So I think it's at a very interesting level. If the pattern that we're seeing repeats itself, we're most likely in for some kind of a move higher, even if it's just to like 69, 70K, followed by the next leg lower. One chart that's very interesting to me, Landy, and we touched on this on the Lady Trader stream as well, is the weekly chart. This pattern, every time I see this particular pattern, be it on the 4 hour or on the daily, it doesn't really matter. It's usually led to some kind of a rollover or an aggressive move to the downside, right? Doesn't mean that it's going to happen right away. It can literally just sit above this area and dance above this for some time. But where this weekly candle closes will be very, very key, right? I think if the weekly candle closes where it's at currently, we're in trouble. Even if we do a spike to 67K and come right back down, where the weekly candle closes on Sunday is going to be very, very pivotal, right? Because then at that point we're looking at lower prices. Granted, as I said, the daily, the 4 hour, it's also they're very oversold, so I wouldn't rule out a bounce. But I think everyone, this is what we should be watching, right? Because we're seeing time and time again, and I think you guys can agree as well. These weekly candle, the closes of these weekly candle, they usually say a lot, right? Whether it's structure, whether there's some kind of continuation, whether it's a trend break, the weekly chart, the weekly candles, they say a lot and they're very key. So that's one thing I'll be looking at. The last piece that I wanted to touch on when it comes to Bitcoin is the quarterly, and we touched on this as well on the stream earlier today. The quarterly does not look the best, right? This structure here, same thing. If we go ahead and break this EMA that it's hanging on, it's not. It signals that there's more downside and more pain to come, right? So the daily closes, seeing that the daily is oversold, we're in for a bounce. I can see that. Weekly close will be key, but also the quarterly. Granted, we do have 25 days uh, to see where the quarterly candle closes, but we've got potentially three red candles. So it's going to be very interesting. And Bitcoin is at a very interesting level overall, right? When we're talking about 4 year cycle, if 4 year cycle is going to repeat itself, where do we bottom? Is it really going to bottom in October? Will we have an early bottom this year? Um, all of this, I'm 100% convinced that we'll know in the chart, right? The chart will kind of tell us where we're at, and it'll give us a better gauge as to what's going to happen, or how do we manage these certain positions, or what do we see in Bitcoin going forward depending on these closes, right? Obviously, the weekly and the quarterly for me are definitely key. And I think we're all in agreement, right? Whenever we're on these wolf spaces or just on ATC, Landy, you and I, we always tell the audience that the short term time frames, they're great, right? They're important, but the weekly, we're seeing how BTC plays the weekly
Yeah.
beautifully, right? And also the quarterly plays a pivotal role. But we have 25 days before the quarterly close, so I guess we'll see, right? Are you guys okay if I bring up the silver chart?
Yeah. Nat, please bring up the silver chart. I hope that we have a special esteemed guest in the audience that is keeping track of what's going on in the silver chart as well. We'll see.
Oh man. Yes. So the reason why, in addition to what I mentioned, right, with us calling the pullback on silver, with what the pullback that we've been seeing across the market, right? We saw how commodities pulled back, we saw equities pull back, we saw BTC pull back. However, the pullback that we're seeing across the board, not surprising to us, right? Because a lot of it has been in the chart, including the pullback in silver. You guys remember that day that silver gave a nasty move to the downside? I think it was a negative 40%. It was completely insane. But a lot of us, those of us that have been looking in the chart and we were looking at the chart and the structure, we were kind of positioned for that kind of downside move, including yourself, Landy, because we were on All Things Crypto and you were letting us know that you were positioning yourself and you were positioning yourself short and you were layering into short because you were getting ready for the downside move. And we saw the downside move and it played out beautifully. Granted, since then we have bounced and we hit key areas, rejected of those, and then now we're down. So now the question remains: with this pullback that we've seen today, where does silver stand now? And here is the thing: on the quarterly chart, silver's quarterly chart, we're still very much overbought,
Hmm.
right? So what does that mean? This means that the move to the downside is not over. And if I were to zoom out on the RSI, and you guys have known me for some time. You know I'm very big when it comes to RSI, and not everyone is, but I think for me, if
Yep.
you zoom out and you look at the long term time frame, the RSI just by itself, it tells you a story, right? And based on that and that story, you're able to position yourself or manage risk, right? And the RSI for silver, the story that it's saying that it usually tells us is that of a cautionary tale, right? Case in point, whenever we see the RSI this overheated on the quarterly, it's usually followed by a move down, an aggressive. It cools off. No matter what, it
Hmm.
cools off, right? We saw it in '08. We also saw it in 2011. The quarterly was overheated and the price came down from its high at 46 to 18. That's a big drop, right? And then
Yeah.
so we've seen it multiple yeah, we've seen it multiple times. Even in 20 in '06. We've seen it again in '07. We saw it in '08. So multiple times. We saw it in 2011 and we're seeing it now again, right? So if history were to repeat itself and if the story were to continue the same as before, what do we think is going to happen to the price, right? It's not going to, maybe this time it deviates. I don't know, right? But if history were to repeat itself or at least rhyme, we're in for some continued move to the downside. And those that trade the stock RSI, this is not a bullish pattern either, right? It's curving down, so it's letting us know that there's a move. Same here. When it was curving down, a move down. When it was curving down, it followed by another move down. Every time it gives us that curve to the downside, the price tends to follow, right? So here's the levels I'm looking at, Landy. I think you and I, we have this. Are we allowed to say bet? Are we allowed to say
Uh,
bet? I think so, right?
yeah, because it's not a monetary bet. This, I mean, I've reached out to Polymarket to make a market for this particular bet, but they said, like, how much liquidity would this really have? Is it really worth it? And they were, but I think the bet is going to have to revolve around another very, very glowing post. So
Oh,
yeah, we have a little bit of a
absolutely.
bet going with a very good friend of ours who's hopefully going to be watching this at some point.
Absolutely. And I want it on record. Okay. That post needs to come out the same day. I don't want it like a week later or at the end of the year. That post, and I want it on record. That post needs to come out the same day. All right, but back to the silver. On the daily, this structure here is very interesting. Again, it's at the 200 EMA on the daily. Very, very big area. If it breaks below this area or breaks below this EMA, we have 62, we have 61, let's call it 61, we have 61 next. If 61 breaks, we have 46 or 45.51, right? So we have 61 and 45.51 that I'll be looking at in areas of interest if we start seeing breaks below current price, or if we break below the 200 EMA, which is very interesting, right? And it would also be in line with the quarterly RSI still being overheated, right? So if you wanted to zoom out and be really, and if we really want to squeeze the juice, we can say it's even going to go into 36, right? This is a very important area too. Overall, I say that to say this. Overall, while silver can give us, I'm not ruling out a bounce. Okay, I'm not saying it's never going to bounce. I'm also not saying that it's going to get there in one crazy candle, right? It may bounce, it may go up and retest certain areas. The overall trajectory, based on history, based on the technical analysis, based on the RSI, and how we've seen it move and how it behaves and and its pattern, it is telling us that there is more downside to come for silver, right? I just wanted to add that, Lanny, because I know you and I, we talk about BTC a lot and silver a lot. Since it's the first time on the show, I figured we touch on this on your show as well, right? So overall, BTC can give us a bounce, correct the RSI there, followed by the next leg down, and same with silver. So that's one thing. Those are two things I'll be paying attention to going into next week.
Well,
Thank you, guys.
I appreciate it, Nat. I do think the silver to 50 is going to happen this year. I'm going to make that call, but I'm not making any bets on it. Okay. No
Okay,
bets.
fair,
No
fair.
bets. Um, and one of the reasons that I say that is because if we look at the way that that the oil markets are and the way that the commodities markets have acted in comparison to in terms of the metals markets and the oil markets for commodities, we've seen a lot of liquidity rotating all over the place. So I think that we kind of need to grab that liquidity on silver anyway. I think actually on the longer term, we could see an aggressive bounce maybe later to new higher highs to create another longer term time frame bearish divergence like what we
Absolutely.
saw. Yeah, you like what we saw over the many years after the initial correction that you had pointed out, right? On your RSI, you had the two peaks. Those two peaks are what led to the drawdown and long form consolidation. And yeah, man, people are not going to like what I'm going to have to say about Bitcoin in the coming weeks if it breaks down. So, because there's some correlations I'm going to be drawing to gold and silver in terms of long form consolidation. Not necessarily a foregone conclusion, but probably not what people want to hear. Um, but yeah, Nat, it's great to have you, and I'm glad that you were able to make it tonight. I know it's a little bit later, but I want to see what next time that I have you on, which by the way, you're both welcome anytime. Next time that I have you on, I want to dig into some things that we haven't dug into before. Now I know we didn't talk about this prior, but um because I really value your perspective on the markets, Bitcoin, silver, equities, freaking killing it in equities, which is actually one of the things that I in the future want to talk to you more about when given the chance because this is a little bit of a selfish endeavor for me because I value the two of you and many others who we interact with in this space. I value your opinions, and there is a lot of questions coming up when it comes to equities as we start moving forward and we see all this liquidity coming out of the entirety of the global markets in preparation for some of these massive IPOs coming up. So I think that that's going to be a really good conversation to have in the future, and we're going to be talking a lot about this on Spaces anyway.
Oh, I 100% agree, especially the SpaceX IPO and what Fidelity just did. And it has been mind blowing, right? The fact that they lowered the barrier to entry for this IPO is absolutely insane. But we'll definitely touch on that next time on your show for sure.
Yeah, everything from the quick listing, within I think 14 days, and then the ability for those to have unlocks earlier, if the price percentage away from IPO, certain price percentage to the upside away from IPO begets earlier unlocks, the unlock schedule, what that stuff means. I've been really digging into it because I think that it is going to be a very big big liquidity event for global markets in general, and that's going to have its effect on crypto.
Absolutely.
But Nat, I
I
appreciate
one-
that. You're
100%
I hope you hang out, but you don't have to.
Oh, absolutely. I want to hear what Mr. Bits of Wealth has to say as well. I think there's a lot of confluence between all three of us, and we kind of all see things similarly, even if we come at it on a different way or different direction. I think the underlying message kind of remains the same, and it's been similar across the board for sure. I'll hang out for a bit. Thanks again, Landy.
Yeah, thank you, Nat. So bits, I you talk about a lot of things that I think a lot of people aren't looking at, and the two of you do actually talk about a lot of things that people aren't looking at well ahead of time. And it never ceases to amaze me. Whether it's Nat with calls like a year in advance for leaps that absolutely rip, or yourself looking at specific charts. I think that well before the crowd, right? Well before they become popular for people to look at, whether it be pairs, whether it be finding value in different sectors of the market. um and you can kind of do you I'm interested in whatever your thoughts are, and whether it's where BTC goes, what your methodology is, what you're looking at specifically right now as prices dropping in the market. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts and kind of what it is that you're looking at. I think I have a little bit of a clue because I do watch your streams, but um some of the audience here might not. Let me go ahead and get your charts up on screen here. And Bits, have at it, man. Tell me what you're thinking and what you got on screen here.
Cool, man. Yeah. Uh, it's this is why I don't like going last. Is like everyone's already said everything, man. I'm just adding more commentary, but yeah. Let's see if maybe there's a different spin on this. Yeah, look, like one of the things that I really like to do is I kind of um, was I guess you could say a little bit controversial in that last I don't know the last 2 years. I spent some time really just looking at Bitcoin against things that you wouldn't think to pair Bitcoin against, such as, for example, Bitcoin over gold, Bitcoin over equities, which now everybody's looking at Bitcoin over equities, Bitcoin over even like a commodities chart here. I'm using GSG to kind of represent that. But yeah, let's look at some of these. Like for example, right now everyone is um, super fixated on stocks, right? Everyone's talking about these IPOs. Everyone's talking about Nvidia, AI, all of that. And right now, if you look at Bitcoin against those markets, it's been just absolutely getting destroyed. It's got a lot of pressure to the downside here. So we just saw some big levels be taken out here this week, really. So we just took out the low of the last quarter. We just took out the low for this chart specifically, right? The low of 2024, and we're going to slowly kind of work our way down here towards the low of 2023 at some point, I suspect, if we don't see this turnaround. And I think it's at one of those key levels though, where if this can find some way to pivot in this area and try and form some type of bottom here, I do think there's an opportunity here. I mean, even structurally, if you're just looking left, This is an area that it would make a little bit of sense for something like that to potentially set up. But some of these high time frames, man, you start going like quarterly or even um, 6 month or 12 month views here on Trading View, and things just look, they just look different. They just look very different than when you're hyper fixated on just like a month of price action or something like that. So
And
we're
Bits,
looking.
what chart is this? What pair is this?
It's BTC over SPX plus NDX. So I've just,
Okay. Okay. So
yeah,
both the
yeah,
indexes.
yep, yeah. I've just
Very,
got them
very
manually in
interesting.
here. So one of the things that I like to do quite a bit is I like to invert these charts. You guys already probably know that about me, but I like to invert them. And I think it just changes your perspective. Like it's almost like it forces your brain to reset a little bit. And so the strength here that you can see on an inverted chart, it's undeniable. It's absolutely undeniable. So far this year's move to the downside has already taken back everything that's been gained in the last 2 years, essentially, and we're quickly approaching 2023 levels in terms of this chart. There's an interesting support here, and remember, this is inverted, right? So this would have been a high from 2017, 2018, but there is a level here that's kind of interesting that we're going to quickly run into at some point. We're basically already there. Um, so yeah, I'm watching this, and I kind of share all of this just to give you guys perspective that sometimes you got to zoom out and you got to look at different ways of pricing or valuing these assets. Like we're seeing here, right now, if you had dry powder, I don't know that it makes sense. And this is going to sound a little controversial, but just like let's think about it for a second. I don't know that if you had dry powder that it makes sense to be buying equities right now, even though equities are clearly outperforming against BTC. But essentially what you're doing is you'd be rotating out of Bitcoin into equities after a 60% correction. Like that time has passed, in my opinion. Doesn't mean you're jumping into Bitcoin necessarily right here either. But I
Yeah.
think we're sitting tight and we're looking for the potential that energy kind of shifts maybe somewhere in here at some point. I mean, there's probably a pretty good chance that we're gonna maybe head towards these lows at least. But after that, I mean, there's a huge void. If anyone watching understands how to use this volume profile, you understand that either this thing is getting a bounce like somewhere in here, or the trip from here to here is going to be pretty speedy heading down towards this node down here. So um I'm paying attention. I this is a chart I've kind of been watching. It's finally in a zone here at that 2024 level where I'm paying attention, and I'm asking myself, is there the potential that this maybe cools off here, forms another type of range similar to this, similar to the one right above that, and ultimately, can this be something that forms a low that allows this trend to shift and Bitcoin to start taking back some of what it's given up to equities here in the last few months. But this one's an interesting chart, and then the commodities doesn't look that different. The commodities chart for Bitcoin still also showing weakness. Bitcoin weakness against commodities. It is coming up to a really key area for me. This area right here is where I'll kind of be looking. So same thing, probably a sweep of 2024, maybe a little bit of an overextension, come into this little pocket here. Could it come down? That this low here is pretty attractive. Even this low here is something to keep an eye on, but still some room to the downside. And if we look at like Bitcoin against gold, it's a similar story as well. So um, I didn't used to pay attention to these charts very much, and I started looking at them at the end of 2023 or so, roughly around there. And I can't even remember exactly how I ended up looking at them, but I remember that Bitcoin against gold was one of the first ones that I looked at, and everyone was talking about, Bitcoin just set an all-time high pre-halving. And I remember looking at this Bitcoin gold chart and saying, interesting that it didn't do that against gold. And then I started looking back and I started noticing that between the Bitcoin and gold and the Bitcoin and USD charts, there's like some divergence that really goes back to 2021, even a little bit before that. But here in 2021, against gold, it essentially double topped with two equal highs. Whereas like the USD one went a little bit higher, not much. It was like 64 and 69, but
Yeah.
there was still a little bit of a difference there. The way they came down was also a little different. So I started to kind of follow it a little bit more since then. And I just found it super interesting that it had such a hard time getting above these 2021 highs, and essentially just had a deviation above them. So that led me to say, okay, well, you know what, I need to look at Bitcoin against equities as well. I need to be tracking it against general commodities, energy, things like that, because if there is something larger at play, like there may be some clues in here. And I think this is pretty in line with what North Star talks about. He
Yeah.
talks about this capital rotation idea. And at the time, I wasn't really following that thesis, but it does align with essentially what I'm seeing on some of these charts. So what does this all mean for Bitcoin USD? Really not a whole lot, I guess, if you're trading, but at the same time, quite a lot. Like this here is essentially going to tell you when the tides are turning, when we start seeing Bitcoin get some kind of bottom and some type of reversal against all of these other sectors. It's probably a good time to be looking back at Bitcoin USD. In the meantime, I think these are still kind of telling us that the favor is not on Bitcoin side at the moment. If we look at Bitcoin, and just to kind of wrap up my Bitcoin take here, going to the 12-month chart, this was not a good looking 12-month close for Bitcoin. It's now coming back down. I suspect there's a pretty good chance we're kind of going to the bottom of this candle here, which is around 38 to 42. I think that makes a lot of sense, that this comes and at least takes that out if it's going to go higher. So we'll be watching that, but there's some quarterly levels on the way down that are also of interest. The next level for me is like 48 to 52. It's kind of where I'm looking. If we don't hold around here, I think 48 to 52 makes a lot of sense. If that doesn't hold, then yeah, I'm looking at 38 to 42 ish. Is there potential it goes lower? Sure. I think anything's possible. If I've learned anything, it's that anything is possible in these charts. But yeah, I mean, Landy, I think I had asked you right on. I can't remember if it was this morning or when that was, but essentially I was looking at this chart here, right? Let me throw it back on. Right. So I was like just looking at Bitcoin over gold and just seeing how flat it was at the highs. And then noticing how, if you notice these lows here from 2022, the 2022 lows, how flat they were compared to every other significant low that we've had, where there's been some kind of event that's led to nice wicky downside action before we go higher. And we just didn't have that here. It's very, very flat. I mean, I know a lot of people will call these like essentially poor lows. They're not a type of low that you suspect is going to hold in the long term. There's a likelihood it's going to get taken. So I'm kind of watching this and I'm thinking like, man, I wonder if this thing's going to come down and then do something different like this if it were to take these lows out. So too soon to call it, but I like to. These are like puzzles to me, and I think it's like a little bit of like a mental exercise to consider some ideas like this of what might be maybe playing out, something different. It could just range up here also for a while, which would be kind of weird, but
Because
Yeah.
if it does that, wouldn't it be forming like a head and shoulder pattern? Look at
it
that, the
did
way
something
you
like
laid
this.
it out.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
my concern with this is like if North Star's capital rotation thesis is correct, and he says that Bitcoin goes into a decade of underperformance or something like that, or an extended bear, could there be a case where Bitcoin needs to correct? Not just one cycle's worth of upside, but maybe a couple cycles worth, something like that. Like maybe it needs to. I mean, I don't know. I'm looking at it inverted, and if I was trading this, I'm like, man, I'd like to see a move for these highs. Like this to me looks kind of juicy. Like this looks like an area somewhere between that low and this high. Looks like an area that I'd like to see swept before it comes back down. But I mean, those are some numbers that I don't think a lot of people want to talk about just yet. So maybe we don't get too into that right now, But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know.
What's funny? I'll show you guys when you show what you would like to show. I'll
Yeah,
show you some things that I'm looking at as well
cool.
that are confluent with the two, with the things that you're talking about, and Nat's talking
Mm,
about specifically. that I think is really interesting regarding the macro compression on
Okay.
Bitcoin across USD and in particular gold. Because the, if we close like this month and we do to get another leg
Yeah.
down, and specifically close like a monthly anywhere below $55,000 and kick off expansion to the downside,
Yeah.
you're going to see what you just drew out play out,
Yeah.
right? And we're already hitting expansion for volatility to the downside on a monthly time frame for Bitcoin over gold.
Mm.
But there is nuance there, right?
Yeah.
There is nuance, but it's about so
Yeah.
when often what the audience doesn't understand is that yes, Bitcoin it outperformed gold on the way up to the highs,
Yep.
but it did not significantly outperform gold in the way that it has in prior cycles. So yes, there was an
Correct.
entire 333% gain or whatever off of the 2022 lows
Yeah.
versus gold, but the expectation in prior cycles was that you see significantly new higher highs and you get a breakout in a run, and it did not do that.
No.
So it's about the performance of one asset versus another. And I think that many
Yeah.
often, even when you or North Star and many others, I think they get lost in that. They think like, well, does that mean that Bitcoin has to go to $8,000 again? Like, no, that's not what that means. That means that one asset is outperforming the other. And now it's about how long does that outperform the other? Right. And
Yeah.
where do you capture the value then? But yeah, I'd like to see what else you got.
Yeah, look, I'm kind of getting a little long-winded here, but let me just clean up some of this, and then we'll get to some of the other stuff. But yeah, I guess like with these pair charts, when you're looking at Bitcoin against these other sectors, like one of the main reasons I look at them is just I think it's what you said. Like even though it still had a significant move to the upside, I mean, it doesn't take a super trained eye to just look at previous cycles and notice that okay, Bitcoin against gold in the past, when Bitcoin's been in the peak in the main part of its bull phase, it absolutely rips against gold. There's never been a flat period against gold. It just rips against it and then it corrects, rips and corrects, right? This has been like very, very tame and very out of character for Bitcoin against gold. This is the first time actually ever that it didn't really set a significant high against gold. Every other time it set a big high, big, huge high, big, huge high. Even this move here, even these double tops was still a nice gain on the previous cycle high. And
Mhm.
this time we didn't have that. So we are seeing, and look, I mean, you can tell that it's rounding off. You can tell that it's losing momentum. Same thing against commodities, right? Big, huge run against commodities, correction, big, huge run, correction, less, significantly less run. It didn't outperform commodities that much, right? So commodities increased in value at a similar rate to Bitcoin in a lot of ways. Same thing against Bitcoin against equities, right? Every time it's been like, boom, Bitcoin has outperformed the stock market. 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 Bitcoin kind of ran the same as the stock market. What changed that all of a sudden Bitcoin is no longer outperforming everything else the same way that it has in previous cycles? So something's changing there. You can come to your own conclusions and speculate on that, but it's just an observation on my part that something has changed here that we hadn't seen in the past. Look, I know that I was going to touch on some of the others stuff, and I'll keep it pretty quickly. But look, if you guys are watching my streams, you've probably seen that I'm still doing quite a bit of altcoin hunting, altcoin setups. Not from and I'm going to be very, very clear about this. Not from a buy and hold. I'm not loading up altcoin bags because I think we're getting an alt season. Nothing like that. But what I noticed is that others dominance, if you go to these high time frames, like a 6-month chart on others.d, there's a clear outperformance here for others dominance against the rest of the crypto sector. It is gaining some of what it's lost. It is definitely taking back some of what it's lost. And
Mhm.
maybe it's just an example of something like this that we've seen in the past, where you get 12 months, 6 months, 12 months of outperformance, and then it just rolls over. I'm perfectly okay with that. I am paying attention right now since we just went above the previous 6 month high. Just this week, I think we went above that, and we are pulling back a little bit. But this is a good looking setup. I mean, if I showed this to just about anyone, and I didn't tell you what it was, you'd say like, yeah, that's a pretty neat looking
Yeah.
reversal there. Like let's see where it goes. Like you may even be tempted to say, okay, maybe there's like a trend line here, and I want to see, can it get up to the trend line, right? Like that looks pretty good. Um, so I am watching others, and for those that don't know what others is essentially everything in crypto except for the top 10, right? So it doesn't include Bitcoin, it doesn't include Ethereum, BNB, XRP. What else is in the top 10? I don't even know if Solana. I don't think Solana is even top 10 anymore. But USDT, USDC are in the top 10, so it doesn't include stables. But this is the poo coins. This is the poo coins, this is the pump fund coins. This is the alts that are not the majors. So this isn't
Yep.
this is probably like your chain link and stuff like that, or your Uniswaps, those type of things. But they have been gaining. I mean, off of the lows, essentially since the beginning of the year. They went as high as 35% on the year, and they are pulling back a little bit. You can also see that in others BTC. So if you go to the others chart, ratioed against BTC, so essentially compared against BTC. Similar thing here. You can see that on the year, others against BTC went almost about 40%
Yeah.
against BTC. That was a nice little run, and this really just explains all of those weird altcoins that we've been talking about. That like Lisa and OTG come on the show every week and say, "Oh, this name and that name and all these things are up 50, 100, 200%." That's why that's why this is moving like that, because there is some liquidity there. So I'm watching these two charts. I'm very much aware of the fact that they just swept the prior 6 month high, and if there is a rejection, like this is potentially where it could happen. But in the near term, I'm watching really more for a pullback, and I want to assess as they pull back. You swept that 6 month high. Can we see some support down here near the previous quarter high, somewhere in here, without
Yeah.
taking out the last month low? And then we'll see what happens there. So, but yeah, this is why I've kind of maintained a semi bullish opportunistic view on some alts, not a blanket alt season, but that some alts will continue to pump.
Yeah, we've talked a bit about this. You, myself, Nat, and then obviously, everyone in crypto is aware of what's going on with some of these
Yeah.
up and comers that are starting to flip the majors, so they're not even going to be included in the others anymore here,
Mm,
like your hyperliquids of the world.
yep.
Um, but it's one of it's something I actually talked about with David, in this case for Nat, David Gockstein, as there's so many Davids in the space. Not David from ATC, but uh DG. I've talked to him
Got
about
it.
yeah, I've talked to him about essentially my my view of things is that we see, um much like we did in the last cycle, we see that the small caps, and meme coins and things start to move when Bitcoin actually is forming its true bottom. It's the same thing that happened 22 into 23, is we
Mm,
had small caps pumping everywhere, and this is pre-pump fund days. Then you had meme coins starting to run. You had outliers in the alts that were just outperforming as Bitcoin was trying to turn it around and actually form and break back into a bullish structure on the weekly. And that's something I think that was giving people a little bit of a false sense of, oh, Bitcoin's going to bottom here at 60K. That was the low, never going to go below it kind of talk that we were seeing everywhere. Is that we saw that people that were looking at that going, well, you've got your hyperliquids and you've got your ZEC and your Venice and this and that, and they've got their list, right, of all these things that are outperforming and they're in bullish structures and all of this stuff. And it's like, well, if Bitcoin isn't giving the signal, they're running counter to the rest of the market, which is fine as long as they can maintain structure. But that does not necessarily mean that Bitcoin is ready. Bitcoin's not looking anything like being ready to set a macro low just yet. And it's going to take time, even if it was going to be a macro low area. Now, granted, we have seen the lower some of what many of us have talked about, 58 to 60K, give it a chance at a swing, but more than likely, very high percentage chance that it breaks down into, the mid to low 50s, upper 40s, and maybe even more from there. And I think that people like are just very confused. And when moving into that, they missed the cycle looking for the all pump, right? Because there wasn't really the alt seasons of yore that we saw, right? You just had giant ranges on all the majors, slightly new all-time highs on everything. Well, Bitcoin did have a bull run, many alts didn't. Um, and then everybody's just kind of all over the place in terms of how to even evaluate the market anymore. And I've maintained that this is normal when you have a growing market, when it is actually growing and actually reaching a wider audience of liquidity, um in this case institutions, um and when you actually start to hit that adoption phase, this is the kind of stuff that you see. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, I'll share my screen here for a moment. I figured out, by the way, midway through that I could spotlight your screen so people could see it easier. Sorry about that to the audience. Um, I'm new, okay? I'm new here. I'm just the intern. All right.
That's all
Um,
right. I mean, with all of your dark charts, next time I'm gonna bring a flashlight.
I know as Ash, I believe, is in the audience, and Ash, you're more than welcome to jump in. And if you ever want to come in, Ash, on like where I'm featuring you, please do so. Just give me a heads up so I can put it out there and feature you. As I like to do a little bit of a write up, and if any of my audience isn't following Nat Nat or Bits of Wealth, you need to be like it. You absolutely need to be some of the best in the game when it comes to being realistic about what's going on for price action in the charts, and realistic in terms of evaluating what could potentially be coming next. They also trade, and they find a lot of value well before the rest of the timelines talking about it. So make sure you're following those, both of them. But let me go ahead and share my screen here. Something that I wanted to kind of show in relation to the Bitcoin over gold chart. And this is something that I've talked about extensively on stages with the two of you. Actually, you've heard me drone on and on and on about it. I think Bits has fallen asleep multiple times and woken up to me still talking about the same thing. But in this case, um, we are seeing an expansion. We're seeing a compression to an expansion on the monthly time frame on the Bitcoin versus gold. And here's the big thing that I think a lot of people really need to understand. Why was Bitcoin outperforming so heavily against gold, and then not performing as well, right? Like look, this was outperformance off the lows to the highs, right? 361%, right? That's outperformance. But that's not the same as what we've seen before, where we get the breakout and we're in the 5, 6, 700 or 800% or more. From Bitcoin's inception, right, um, to the actual topping structure here for Bitcoin versus gold, Bitcoin went up 410 million% on that deviation. Okay, that's insane. And for anybody to think that that's anywhere close to normal, then maybe they need to get their head checked, like me, because it becomes normalized after a while. But why did it do that? If you look here from the beginning days of charting on the index, you've got August of 2010 through to today, right? Well, if we were to go to gold's chart in 2010 in this case, and we were going to take a look at 2010, well, 2010 in August, we'll throw down a horizontal here, or a vertical rather, not a horizontal. What did I say? August 2010. Let's go to August of 2010 if I can actually find it. There we go. August of 2010 until last cycle, essentially, we had gold in a giant consolidation structure, right? All the way through technically until you could consider these deviations. But if you look at this, we didn't start to really see the breakout and then the retests. We saw the breakout in 2020 through to 2021, right? And what do we see after this years and years and years long consolidation? Well, we've got 3,808 days, right? So we've got from August of 2010 till 2021, essentially. So we've got 10 and a half to 11 years of consolidation and a massive macro low that was set. Bitcoin outperformed like crazy and even through 2021, right? But gold is now resolved that consolidation with a giant, massive run up. So, what I would be looking for, one is I don't think that this run up is necessarily done anytime soon. It's going to remain in a longer term time frame, high volatility environment for gold. And this is where, the yesteryears are gone in this regard because gold in this case was within a 45% range high to low and sat from 13 from the 13 lows, including the deviation down, but essentially sat at pretty much even prices on those lows until about 2019. Let's just go figure. That's when Bitcoin had that lower high coming into the COVID event, right? And then, of course, resolves that to the upside in the macro and starts running. This is where I love volatility. This this can absolutely quote unquote crash and still be in beautiful, perfect structure. There is there is nothing wrong here in terms of structure. This thing could absolutely come all the way back down here to $3,000 an ounce. Structure still looks good. It really does. And it will remain in a high volatility environment as well until we see the next bigger compression. When we look at a quarterly, this is a massive, massive run up. The start of the expansion off of the higher low in 2018. Might remember bear market of 2018, big run up to expansion. And then we had essentially a quarterly bull flag to a retest and then straight up. A cool down here between 3,000 and the quarterly's upper first at 3,500 to 3,600. Honestly, that's still expansion. This could mean revert all the way back to $3,000 in the monthly. If it's still closing quarterlies above 3,500 bucks an ounce, it's still in its run, and this can take a long time to actually play out and actually start to then go back into a consolidation structure. So I think that when looking at Bitcoin over gold, it's one of the things to consider is whenever we see the next bigger move down, if Bitcoin can hold some key levels versus USD, you'll see it get its nice bounce, even if they're both moving down, as long as it's relative to its strength relative to gold can hold up at some lows and start carving them out. I think we get a, you know, I think we get a longer form consolidation from a quarterly time frame here. And that's where the monthly is hitting, its acceleration to the downside. I'm looking at the possibility in the coming months of testing. Um, you know, I'm looking at the possibility. And remember, this is irrespective of Bitcoin's fiat price for the audience out there. This is, going to be around 8.9 ounces of gold to Bitcoin or Bitcoin to gold, 8.9. So
Bear market
we're
lows.
looking at that probably getting tested.
Yeah.
In fact, it's very, very highly likely that if we if at minimum we're going to test 1210, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, and then very highly likely on any kind of a breakdown, we're headed to the 890 to around the 1050 range down there.
Yo, Landy, real quick. So here's an
Mhm.
example of this is I love that we're covering this on stream. This is an example of the charts telling you ahead of time what narratives and news and headlines are going to be. If this happens, you can bet your butt that CTs, that's all the CT is going to be talking about. People are going to be posting this chart. Bitcoin against gold breaks bear market low for the first time ever because it's never done this. It's never taken out a bear market low
Yeah.
against gold. I don't know when this would happen. I'd assume this happens in the next, 3 to 6 months. But yeah, this is an example of few people are looking at this and kind of getting ahead of what that narrative is going to be. And then when that happens, here's the interesting part: when that finally happens and everyone starts talking about it and people get uber bearish on this, uh, most of the move is going to be completed at that point. We're going to be looking for the opposite of what most of the timeline is going to be looking for.
Yeah, and
Oh,
honestly, this is why I keep saying to people that are like, "Oh, well, everybody's having fun in TradFi and and Bitcoin and Ethereum and cryptos are all dead, and TradFi is going to come there and take it over, and those coins are worthless. Why would you ever be in them? You should be in TradFi right now." Granted, you could squeeze out some profits in TradFi. I don't think that the melt up is over. I think we're going to see some corrections, maybe even some deeper corrections here in the near future. But that's you essentially are missing the bulk of the moves there and ignoring value zones in other places, right? So if you're going to look there on the next move down, I would imagine that Bitcoin also takes a nice move down with traditional markets if they get a wider correction.
agreed.
Um, being as far out on the risk curve as Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are, outliers be damned. In that case, really, I mean, they're great. It's fun to be in an outlier, but you're it's still very far out on the risk curve. And in this case, we're below 50% of the run up, and that's really in Bitcoin versus gold, that's value below the 50% read, or the 50% Fibonacci or point 0.5 fib level, right? Now this is log scale. I believe this is log scale. Let me make sure log scale is on. Yep. Yep. So now it's about what if we go lower? What if we deviate below the low? Because then, oh well, it's all over then, right? Now Bitcoin's failed in its mission. Bitcoin is not digital gold, and it's like, well, that's actually not what Bitcoin is in the first place. But that's the narrative that is being pumped out there by all of these asset under management companies, all of the talking heads, hedge against inflation, store of value and all of that kind of stuff. Well, those things are true. Those are very, very um, ancillary kind of points that many are making about Bitcoin just to promote their product, right? And in this case, if we were going to get a deviation below, I'd be looking right here. And this isn't a non-standard fib level because I don't necessarily utilize the Fibonacci sequence, although there are Fibonacci sequence fibs on here. I like to use a little bit of non-standard stuff because it is percentage based. And one of the things that I would be looking at is we recaptured and let me get the Bollinger Band set off here so it's a little bit cleaner on the stream. We we came down and broke below, right? We broke below the prior all-time high versus gold, and we hit the lower high. Um, Now this was the lower high, so we had the big rundown. This was the breakdown from the structure here from the pennant, and then the lower low, the bear market, lower high, technical higher low, equal low structure, higher low close, and that lower high pretty much got hit directly right on the close. we could absolutely deviate it down to the next level, which would be the high side of the consolidation of the higher low. And honestly, anywhere here and under for me, while watching for my positioning, is value for me for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies because I want to capture the
I
discount.
agree. Yep, I agree. 100%.
I'm not going to
Yep.
full port all my Bitcoin at a discount to go and chase premium. Right? I'd rather wait for the premium there while I have discount right in front of me. And then when there's discount there in traditional markets, I will take advantage of getting into those discounts as well. So I think the big narrative here is I think that people get really, really scared. And this is actually feedback that I've gotten while we've all been on stage with Cade, Wolf Bitcoin. Big shout out to Cade. He runs such a great show. Um, a bunch of great shows. But fact of the matter is like people actually get scared because they're in Bitcoin, maybe even long-term holders, and they're looking at it going, well, they're looking at the gold, they're looking at all of these things. I'm scared. And you shouldn't be scared because we will see rises in price versus equities versus gold and Bitcoin, right? We will see it outperform again. It's a matter of perspective in understanding value versus discount versus premium or value areas. And if you don't have a plan, what that tells me when they message me stuff like that is it tells me that they don't have a plan for accumulation. They don't have an actual thesis and a plan to execute based on that thesis for how they want to take advantage of it, which is what leads people to get wrecked all the time and chase. Like full porting from cryptocurrencies to go and I don't know, maybe you full port out of your ETH and you go buy Venice, you go buy um sorry, I got to pick on Bankless a little bit here. You go full port into to VVV at the top, you go full port into Hyperliquid at the top, you go full port into privacy coins at the top and just absolutely get destroyed. Um that that means that they don't understand value or they were purposely squeezed out. Like that's all that tells me. And I've had this argument with David a few times is like he's got people telling him the same thing and they're OGs. And I'm like, let them go chase premium. They shouldn't be here then if they don't understand discount and value.
100%.
But I don't want to keep you both here too long. I think that this was absolutely fantastic. I want to do more of this. The two of you are always welcome back. Do you have any final thoughts or parting words that you'd like to give to the audience, or even a chart if you wanted to give a preview for something? If you want to shout out where you're going to be next, spaces, streams, feel free.
Sure. I think, man, this was absolutely amazing. It's always incredible to have three analysts and analyze different charts and come to the same conclusion, right? I think that's incredible. I think it's beautiful, and I think what people need to understand, because you're absolutely right, there is a lot of fear in lower prices. But if you've been doing this a really long time, you have to understand that in certain cases, lower prices equals opportunity, right? I think when it comes to retail investors, they usually have it a little bit backwards, right? We get excited when the price is running hot, when it's nice and it's green. Keep in mind, those that are nice and profit, those that are actually making the money in the bull market is because they took advantage and positioned themselves in the bear, right? Positioning in
Mhm.
the bear is key. So welcome lower prices because oftentimes they equal opportunity. And Landy, one thing I want to touch on next time I am on your show is the liquidity levels. I am very, very big on these liquidity levels, especially when it comes to BTC, because I think at the end of the day, liquidity is key. And I said this earlier, and I'm going to say it again. In real estate, it's all about location, location, location. But I think when it comes to Bitcoin, liquidity, liquidity, liquidity.
I agree, Nat. I agree. Bits. Nat. Let me say this. If y'all don't know where to find Nat, obviously, if you follow me, you probably already know Bits and Nat. And shout out to everybody in the audience. Much love to you all. But you need to be following Nat. You can find her on ATC, which is all things crypto with Dave Cool, and of course, not um, Monday through Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the reason why I stumbled there is because sometimes the puppet shows up late. You can also
And that is okay. That is okay. And the other show I'm on, and I'm also on it with Landy and Bits of Wealth. It is the Market Talk shows, guys. If you haven't been on the Wolf Bitcoin Market Talk spaces, you have to absolutely just carve up a few times of your few moments of your day and just join in, even if it's just as a listener, because there's a lot of alpha that is being dropped across the board from different speakers. And I'm telling you, Kay does an incredible job curating analysts and speakers and bringing us all together in one show where we can all drop alpha and talk markets. And that is almost every day. We have 11 o'clock spaces, but we also have them later on, right? I believe on Thursdays, that's the 2 o'clock spaces. And on Sundays as well, but that's
excellent.
6:15 p.m. EST.
Thank you so much, Nat. And Bits, any parting words for the audience here, our friends? And
What's David G saying in the chat? Hold on.
he's trolling.
Landy letting his guests talk is wild. I agree. Yeah, my the running joke is that Landy puts me to sleep. Like I gotta go slam an energy drink and get some a straight shot of adrenaline in my vein or something to listen to this guy. And still, I don't know what the heck he's talking about. But no, look, dude, I don't have much to add, dude. I think it was a good stream. Great space, great takes.
Great space.
Yeah, what do these guys say after they give a 2-hour monologue? Great space, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me.
And then immediately leave.
And then leave. They come in, they don't listen to anything before them. They give their 2-hour monologue. Great space, great take, guys. This is awesome. Then they leave. Nah, look, dude, these are fun, man. You know me, I'm always on a space or a stream or something, supporting the homies, and it just is what it is, dude. But when you love something, it's not work. You know what I mean? It's your passion. It's the thing you do for fun, for work, for rest and relaxation, and for all of that. So nah, dude, just appreciate the invite. These are good. Been watching your market analysis and market update stuff for a while, and that's where I was able to train my AI to do the Landy. If it goes up, it goes upper, and if it goes upper, it goes upper, and if it goes down, it goes downer, right? But
Yeah.
nah, dude.
And it's always dumpiest before bumpiest, right?
Dumpiest
It's
before
always dumpiest before.
pumpiest. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Uh,
It's always pumpiest before dumpiest and
Yeah.
dumpiest before pumpiest. I read that on the internet and then I repeated it on stage. Now it's lore attributed to me.
Yeah. There you go, man.
Yeah.
It has been working though, right? It has been working.
I mean, it has. I mean, it went down and then it went down and that's pretty much what we were looking for. So it might go down there's a lot of there, but
Yeah.
for anybody that isn't following Bits, you can find him at Bits of Wealth. You can find
Yeah.
Nat at NatNatX007. We now know what that means, Nat. Also, of course, Bits is
Landon. Okay, hold on. Landon, we're not gonna go
what?
there on your space.
No, I almost sicked the LIA on myself. But yeah, you can find Bits
Okay.
obviously over with the Wolf Network on the Trader Talk Spaces. He is the co-host there at Wolf Bitcoin. Look, the two of the best. I actually I know that because I have spent enough time watching what they do, talking to them, not for years now. That if you aren't following them right now, you need to go do it. So I want to thank you again. I hope you all have a wonderful night. I hope the two of you have a great weekend. And then, of course, I'm going to
Likewise.
talk to you probably on streams, in your chats, and then again on spaces on Monday. So I will see you then. And I'm going to have them let them jump off gracefully here. And I want to thank the audience here, everybody that liked and shared this out there. I really appreciate it. Look, really valuable insight from the two of them. You all hear me all the time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm going to be doing more of this. I'm going to be highlighting. I'm going to be bringing them back. Like, there's no way I'm not. I want to pick their brains. This is, like I said, a selfish endeavor. But there's other people that I'd like to bring on as well, that I think need to be highlighted because they really have a good perspective on where the market is headed. Um, and I think they can provide a lot of good objective analysis for you to ponder, and compare to what it is that you are looking at. So I want to wish you all a wonderful weekend, a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. Take care.